We're almost halfway through the year, and a lot of people are running on empty without fully realizing it. Grow Therapy helps you find care that's covered by insurance before burnout becomes the baseline. Whether it's your first time in therapy or your 50th, Grow makes it easier to find a therapist who fits you, not the other way around. They connect you with thousands of independent licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person sessions, nights and weekends. You can search by what matters, like insurance, specialty, identity, or availability, and get started in as little as 2 days. And if something comes up, you can cancel up to 24 hours in advance at no cost. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments. You just pay per session. Grow helps you find therapy on your time. Whatever challenges you're facing, Grow Therapy is here to help. Grow accepts over 100 insurance plans, including Medicaid in some states. Sessions average about $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0 depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/booknow to get started. That's growtherapy.com/booknow. growtherapy.com/booknow. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan.
Pros, save more on the materials you need to get the job done inside and out at Lowe's. Right now, get 10% off in-stock Trex Naturals decking, now available in more styles. Plus, get 15% off select custom entry, interior, and storm doors. Then, we'll deliver it all straight to your job site to help keep your jobs moving. Get the brands pros trust, priced right, and ready when you need them. Our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Valid through 5/27. While supplies last. Selection varies by location.
You're listening to Missing Persons, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, DNA ID, Scene of the Crime, Zodiac Speaking, Beyond Bizarre True Crime, Campus Killings, Below the Surface, and Killer Communications. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its creators, or sponsors. This episode may contain unsettling or disturbing subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
If you'd like to support Missing Persons and get VIP access to things like ad-free listening, early preview episodes, and bonus content of not only this show, but for every other podcast on the AbJack network of indie podcasts, consider subscribing to the show with an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcast. For only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, you'll unlock a variety of listener benefits, and you'll be supporting the show in the process. Your support is greatly appreciated.
Welcome to Missing Persons, a podcast dedicated to spreading the word about people who have vanished under mysterious or unexplained circumstances and the family members who are looking for answers. I'm Jess Betancourt.
And I'm Mike Morford. Together, we created this podcast to help give a voice to people who continue to search for their missing loved ones. In some cases, even after decades have gone by.
Today, we bring you 2 updates to bring you up to speed on recent developments relating to cases we've covered on Missing Persons in the past. The disappearance of Sandra Crispo was our very first episode of Missing Persons. Sandra, age 54, was amicably divorced from her former husband, Boston lobsterman Stephen Crispo, and they shared 2 adult children, Lena and Stephen Jr. Sandra was an introvert and homebody who had a close but small circle of friends and relatives, and who was content to live a simple, fairly minimalist, quiet existence. After her divorce, Sandra moved in with her father, Stephen, a retired bricklayer in Quincy, Massachusetts, until his sudden death in 2018. In 2019, Sandra sold the large house and moved to a 600-square-foot, 1-story renovated house on Spofford Avenue in Hanson, a quiet, safe town of only 10,000 residents. This was close to the home of her daughter, Lena, which was by design. Sandra had started to take on the role of caregiver for Lena's 3 small sons. Lena worked long shifts at a Boston hospital, and her husband Tim worked full-time as well, so they needed someone to care for their 3 boys, who were still too young to be in school full-time. Sandra and her black lab Clarence moved into her new home in the spring of 2019. There, she led a quiet, uncomplicated existence. She was close with her sisters Wanda and Linda and some cousins, but she was new to Hanson and didn't have any friends close by. And Sandra had no computer and no cell phone. She used a landline phone for calls and did not use social media or even a debit card. She wasn't dating anyone and remained on good terms with her ex, who was not a suspect in her case. Sandra's new weekday routine was that either Lena or Tim would drop her grandsons at Sandra's place, and she would do activities and manage them until their parents picked them up after work. Occasionally, they would spend the night. She loved taking care of the boys. Things went smoothly for a few months, and then in summer of 2019, things took a very dark turn. On Wednesday, August 7th, Sandra had taken care of the 3 boys as usual while Lena worked. After he finished his shift around 3:30, Lena's husband, Tim, came to pick the boys up. Sandra's car had been making a very loud noise, so Tim put the boys in his truck, and the 4 of them followed Sandra in her vehicle to a nearby automotive repair shop, Rotary Auto in Pembroke, where their regular mechanic, someone they trusted, could look it over and give Sandra an estimate. She had to leave the car there, so Sandra handed over her entire keychain, which included the keys to her house. Tim and the boys then squeezed Sandra into the truck and gave her a ride home. First, they stopped off at the Cumberland Farms, located at 2 Main Street in Hanson, so Sandra could pick up some cigarettes. Video surveillance footage from the convenience store provided the last known images of Sandra. She can be seen wearing a tank top, pink capri pants, and flip-flops and carrying a large handbag. She bought her cigarettes, returned to the truck, Tim drove her home. She got out of the truck around 5 p.m., and Tim drove away. He never went into the house. The next day, Thursday, Lena was off work, so Sandra did not have the kids. The mechanic called Lena and reported that her mom's car was going to be a rather expensive repair job. Lena hung up with him and called Sandra's home phone but got no answer. This was bizarre because, remember, Sandra had no car. She could have been out for a walk with Clarence, though, so Lena called back later. Again, no answer. She started to get a little concerned. Sandra could not have gotten far without her vehicle. The closest store was Walmart, 2 miles away. Lena kept trying to get her mom on the phone but had no luck. That night, she told Tim that she had a very bad feeling that something was wrong. The next morning, Friday, the kids were scheduled to sleep over at their grandma Sandra's, but Lena still couldn't get a hold of her mom, so she decided to go over there. Around 9 a.m., she put the kids in the car and drove to Hanson. Lena pulled into Sandra's driveway and could see the lights in the house were on. She told the boys to stay in the car, and she tried the front door. It was locked, but Lena knew there was a sliding door into the rear of the house that provided access from the small backyard. She found this door unlocked. She slid it open. Inside, the air conditioner was on, the lights were on, but Clarence, Sandra's lab, who was usually very hyper and jumped up on everyone who came in, lay shivering on a recliner, acting scared. He had no food or water in his dishes. And there was no sign of Sandra. Her shoes and purse were missing. And in the bedroom, Lena noticed that Sandra's bed was partially sagging where the slats had fallen, as if someone had lifted up the mattress and knocked the slats aside. Some reports even say the mattress was off the bed entirely. Some closets appeared to possibly have been rifled. Even more concerning, the brand new fitted sheet to the bed was missing. And this from a later interview Lena did with Boston 25. Quote, "There was a tiny bit of blood spatter in almost every room of her house. Under her bed there was a pillowcase with photos that had blood in it. It was almost like someone was looking for money. The bed slats were off. There were tiny droplets on the door frame too. In the bathtub, I think they recovered some as well." End quote. But Lena did not know about all this blood at the time. She saw the disrupted bed, the closets, the hungry dog, and the empty house. And she had to get to work. So she called Sandra's sister Linda, who was close with Sandra, to see if she knew where her mom was. Linda hadn't heard from her but offered to take the boys for the day. So Lena left to drop them off, and her husband Tim agreed to stop over to Sandra's place after work to see if she had come back. Linda also called Sandra's cousin Therese, who had grown up with Sandra, both the daughters of identical twin moms. Therese hadn't heard from Sandra either, but said that she and Sandra had spoken when Therese called Sandra's house phone on Wednesday, while Lena's boys were still there. The two had made a plan for Therese to pick Sandra up on Wednesday evening after she dropped her car at the mechanic and bring her to her own house for a sleepover. She had planned to drive Sandra home on Thursday. Therese said that she never picked Sandra up because Sandra never got back to her on Wednesday, and Therese couldn't get a hold of her on her home phone. Police later confirmed that the call Therese made to Sandra's house during the day on Wednesday was the last incoming call that Sandra answered. When Tim got to Sandra's house that afternoon and there was still no sign of her, he called the Hanson police, and the search for Sandra Crispo began. I'm going to skip the details of the early days of the missing person investigation. Hanson police took Sandra's case seriously and did everything they could to find her. Lena and Tim hired a PI after police came up with nothing. He, too, came up empty. After Lena asked the Plymouth County District Attorney's Office to get involved, the Massachusetts State Police took over the case. They conducted interviews of people in Sandra's life and started to get a handle on a possible motive. When Sandra's father, Stephen, whom she had lived with at the time, died in 2018, he left behind quite a bit of money, including, reportedly, $1 million in gold bars. His will was contested among the family and rifts were created. I understand that Sandra was not motivated by money, but the same might not be said for other members of the extended family. Who would have a motive to enter Sandra's home, harm her, and rifle the place? Someone looking for something of value. To recap the timeline of Sandra's disappearance, Lena believes that Sandra was taken on Wednesday evening, August 7th, after Tim dropped her off at home because the clothes and shoes she was wearing that day were not in the house. The phone records showed that she had made no calls since Tuesday and had last answered the incoming call from Therese on Wednesday. Sandra had never followed through on the plan the cousins had made for Wednesday evening. She just vanished. She was missing for 6 years. On March 6, 2025, a hunter walking on a deer trail off Route 3 North in Plymouth County, Massachusetts, found a piece of a human skull. This was reported to be near the breakdown lane between old exits 13 and 14 on 3 North, now exits 32 and 36. This was 16 miles from Sandra's home in Hanson. A Plymouth County DA's office press release stated that Massachusetts State Police responded to the area and recovered human remains, which were transported to the state office of the chief medical examiner. The district attorney's office used the FBI for further testing of the skull, and DNA was extracted and entered into the CODIS Unidentified Human Remains database, and it got a hit to the DNA of Sandra Crispo. Boston 25 has covered the Sandra Crispo case extensively. This from their piece about the discovery. Quote, "They told me the human remains recovered on March 7th were those of my mom. I guess it was a frontal part of the skull," Lena McMahon said. "I'm grateful we can finally grieve my mother. It's been a long time coming. I'm grateful for that. But it does open a lot of old wounds. It brings up a lot of feelings." So what happened to Sandra and how did she get dumped in the woods along Route 3 North? Lena told Boston 25 she believes her mother was killed over her inheritance and someone in the family, or someones, are responsible. Why would anyone want to do something like this to your mother? Boston 25's Bob Ward asked Lena. "The only logical thing I can think of, Bob, is greed," Lena said. "I think she was a victim and she was targeted for something that she did not have, specifically gold," Lena said. Who could have done this? The Massachusetts State Police have not released the source of the blood found in Sandra's house, nor have they named any suspects, much less made any arrests. But a local journalist who has blogged extensively about the case, Dave McGrath, has reported on his blog that he has confirmed the blood belongs to Eric Nelson, the boyfriend of Sandra's sister, Linda Dabrowski. According to McGrath's blog, Nelson told police he cut himself hanging a photo for Sandra in her new home, and neighbors heard her arguing with a male on the night she disappeared. We will have to await the release of public information to confirm McGrath's reporting. For now, anyone with any information regarding Sandra Crispo's disappearance is urged to contact Hanson Police at 781-293-4625 or Massachusetts State Police assigned to the Plymouth County DA's office at 508-894-2600. Our other case update today is Paige Coffey. We covered Paige's case in our last episode of 2021, which was a crossover with True Crime Garage. We interviewed Paige's mom, Trinatea Williamson, for our episode. As a refresher, in 2019, 27-year-old Paige Coffey was a bubbly, fun-loving, social, and active young woman living and working in the Cleveland, Ohio area. She was very close with her close-knit family, in particular her mom, Trinatea, with whom she spoke daily. Paige had been divorced in 2016 and was now taking classes at Youngstown State to realize her dream of being a fashion merchandiser. But then, in 2017, she met Patrick Samar Mason Jr. In a nutshell, their relationship escalated quickly, and Paige began spending all her time with PJ, as he was called. And she also quickly began showing the classic signs of a relationship in which she was physically abused and was under the coercive control of her abuser. Paige started to withdraw from her family, stopped being in contact with them and her friends, stopped posting on social media, stopped going to her classes, and quit her job at the fashion retailer Torrid in the Steelyard Commons shopping mall. When pressed, she admitted that PJ had taken her phone and was checking in on who she was talking to and what she was doing online. She started to exhibit signs of physical abuse, including bruises, a black eye, and cuts. The walls of her apartment had holes in them, and PJ stopped allowing her to go anywhere on her own. She became quiet and meek. On one occasion, she admitted to her mother that PJ had strangled her to the point of unconsciousness, and in another episode, her mother picked her up and found that she reeked of gasoline, but would not talk about what happened. In early 2019, Paige also texted a friend that, quote, "For 2 years he nearly killed me. I've been shot at, strangled, stabbed, beat, burnt with milds, raped, and embarrassed," end quote. A mental health professional diagnosed Paige with depression and anxiety as a result of her toxic relationship with PJ, after she ended up in a psychiatric hospital after an incident in which PJ claimed Paige shot at him. He produced a note in which she supposedly confessed to this, but the note did not appear to be in Paige's handwriting. When Paige got out of the hospital, she was able to resist going back to PJ and went to stay with her mother. But a few weeks later, on April 30th, 2019, she asked her mom to give her a ride to Oakwood Village. This was the town where PJ lived. She didn't acknowledge that she was going to see him because she knew her mom did not approve. And that was the last time Trinitea saw her daughter. Trinitea did hear from Paige on May 1st when her daughter texted her, asking her to add $30 to her Cash App card. Her mom sent her the money, but had reservations about what it was going to be used for, and that was the last time she heard from her daughter. Paige failed to call her mother on Mother's Day, May 11th, and that's when Trinitea knew that something was very, very wrong. She called PJ, and he told her that he and Paige had broken up and he hadn't seen her in weeks. Then he changed his story and said he hadn't seen her since May 7th. Trinitea filed a missing persons report on Paige on May 17th in Braunton, Ohio, where Paige had last been living with her grandmother. Although police were slow to take Paige's disappearance seriously, they did verify that on May 5th, Paige and PJ stayed overnight at a cheap motel in Copley Township near Akron. They were evicted for smoking on the 6th. On that day, on Monday, Paige went to PJ's landscaping job with him. And the following day, Tuesday, May 7th, police knew that PJ went to see his probation officer for a required check-in. They found surveillance footage of Paige and PJ together at a Home Depot in Steelyard Commons shopping mall in Cleveland. They each purchased something. Records showed that Paige bought a candy bar and PJ bought a Snickers and some brake fluid, and they left the store together. Unfortunately, there were no surveillance cameras outside the store that showed where Paige and PJ went after that. Police pinged Paige's phone and found it had last been active on the same evening as the Home Depot trip, May 7th, around 6 p.m. After that, it was shut off. Paige never contacted her family or anyone again. When Paige started dating PJ, he was already on probation for another domestic violence incident in which he held his girlfriend captive for 2 days and choked her until she passed out. He was found guilty of menacing and domestic violence charges, but served no actual jail time. He also had an extensive record and had served prison time for aggravated theft, aggravated robbery, where a firearm was used, complicity to burglary, and grand theft. Nearly a year after Paige's disappearance, PJ was arrested after being found passed out drunk in his car on January 29, 2020, at the Bishop Shell gas station in Willoughby Hills, Ohio. When police roused him and the young woman he was with, who was also passed out, a gun fell out of his pants. As a felon, he was in violation of federal law to be in possession of a firearm. Penalties were stiffened because he had been convicted of domestic violence as well. And the gun had traveled through interstate commerce, having been manufactured in Brazil. Upon his arrest, he was questioned about Paige's disappearance, but denied having anything to do with it, even though he was found in possession of one of her cell phones. His girlfriend at the time also reported that he had placed a pillow over her face and tried to smother her. His own family reportedly wanted nothing to do with him. PJ finally ended up pleading guilty to the charge of gun possession by someone convicted of domestic violence and was sentenced to 58 months in prison, entering the federal penitentiary on March 4th, 2021. This from News Nation in late April 2026, quote, "For the first time since Paige Coffey's disappearance, the Bracknell police chief told News Nation exclusively that Mason is a person of interest in the missing case. In a formal statement, the department said, law enforcement partners on the local, county, state, and federal levels have conducted many interviews and executed countless search warrants in the case. News Nation tracked Mason, 33, to a jail near Youngstown, Ohio, where he's being held on a federal gun charge. His attorney of record for that case has not returned requests for comment from Mason." News Nation also discovered that Cleveland police had investigated Mason for the murder of 15-year-old Naira Lockhart. She was found shot to death in October 2019. The police case was presented to prosecutors, and the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office did not file felony charges. Lockhart's murder, which happened just 5 months after Coffey disappeared, remains unsolved. Wait, You're asking, is PJ Mason still in jail for the 58-month sentence handed to him in March of 2021? No, he's in jail on newer charges. He had been released from prison and reoffended. He's now awaiting trial on federal gun possession charges slapped on him after he was arrested on July 4th, 2024, after being found asleep in a running vehicle with a 9mm Taurus pistol in plain view next to him. His trial is currently scheduled for summer of 2026. But hopefully he will soon be facing even more serious charges. At the end of April 2026, the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's Office revealed that they had located human remains identified by DNA as belonging to Paige Coffey. On April 17th, skeletonized human remains were found in a detached garage at a vacant house at 3809 East 142nd Street in Cleveland when some people were cleaning out the garage. The cause and manner of death have not been released, and whether PJ Mason has any connection to this address is unknown. Cleveland Missing released a statement on behalf of the Coffey family. It said, "Within the last 24 hours, the family of Paige Coffey was informed that her remains have been identified. They are devastated by this loss, and we at Cleveland Missing grieve alongside them. At this time, the family is unable to give any interviews. The loss is too fresh. They wish to extend their heartfelt gratitude to everyone who helped search for Paige and to the members of the media who kept her story alive." Anyone with information regarding Coffey's disappearance and death are encouraged to contact the FBI Cleveland Field Office at 216-522-1400 or Crime Stoppers at 216-252-7463. There is a reward for information. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Missing Persons. If you can provide any information to help solve the case we discussed in this episode, please contact the appropriate authorities.
If you enjoy this podcast, please take a moment to tell your friends about Missing Persons and invite them to listen to the show. Word of mouth will help us grow and bring these cases to a larger audience. You can also help us by taking a moment to rate and review Missing Persons on the platform you're listening to us now on. If you want to get early and ad-free access to new episodes of Missing Persons and help support the show in the process, please consider a subscription through Apple Podcasts. For only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, you'll get early ad-free access to not only this show, but to every other show on the AbJack network of podcasts. You can get started with a free trial by searching for AbJack Entertainment in your Apple app, and we'll include a link in the show notes. If you want to find us on social media, we're on every major platform and on YouTube. Just search for Missing Persons Podcast. We'll include links to all of our social media in our show notes, and you can also visit our website, missingpersonspodcast.com. Finally, if you're in need of a platform to discuss a missing persons case that you're connected to, feel free to reach out to us on our website. We're happy to help. Just a reminder that new episodes of Missing Persons air every other Saturday. On behalf of Jess Betancourt, this is Mike Morford saying thanks, and we'll see you next time on Missing Persons.
Ready or not, summer is coming, and Wayfair's Memorial Day clearance is on now. Right now through May 25th, get up to 70% off everything home at Wayfair. Plus, score amazing doorbuster deals all sale long and surprise flash deals on Memorial Day. We're talking thousands of products at every style and budget. Now is the time to save big on must-haves for your patio, backyard, and beyond. These savings won't last, so don't wait. Shop Wayfair's Memorial Day clearance now through May 25th.
Wayfair, every style, every home.